Good morning. It's Monday, the 30th of June, 2025. About 7 a.m. Just finished breakfast. And today I thought I'd talk about something that has become, something I've been thinking about more and more these days. And that is aging out of sailing. And whether or not I should consider, getting rid of the sailboat and maybe buying a powerboat for the last segment of my boating life. That's aggravated this year because so far, I'm pretty confident that we're not going to get the boat in the water in June this year. This will be the first time since we bought the boat in the middle of June 1996 that we haven't had it in the water in June. The only other time that we didn't have it in May was, about 10, 12 years ago, when we went to load the mast. The furler broke, and that delayed our launch by about 10 days while I got parts and repaired the furler. It wasn't a big deal, but, we didn't get the boat in until the first week of June. This year, we've missed June completely, or we will have tomorrow. But I haven't heard anything from the hauler, so she's not going in today. So that's where we are right now. And that makes me think, maybe it's time to move on. And there are a couple of other reasons for that. One is that the sailboat, it does limit us quite a bit. The way we use it now, we seldom go out for more than about 3-4 hours. And that means that we pretty much stay right around the Great Harbor of Mount Desert Island. Last year we went over to Swans Island once, and mostly, though, we sail around the Great Harbor of Mount Desert Island, maybe go over to the Cranberries, and maybe once or twice a season we sail around the Cranberry Islands just to get out in the open ocean. And that's been it. So, the farthest we've been from home or from the marina was 12 miles. That's just a time constraint. We simply, find that we are not spending that much time underway anymore. And that really limits where we can go. So nowadays I start thinking, if we sold the sailboat, we could buy a powerboat that goes faster, and we could go a lot of the places that I'd like to see again. Like, I would love to go out to Mount Desert Rock. But that's a 15-hour round trip in the sailboat. It's just not going to happen anymore. Or, I'd like to go back to Burnt Coat Harbor on the far side of Swans Island, or maybe over to Stonington, or maybe back up to Bucks Harbor at the other end of the Eggemogan Reach. So I start thinking, maybe it's time to buy a faster boat that we can just go out, hop in, and go. A lot less work. Also, with a pilot house, we can be out of the weather. That's one of the issues with the sailboat. When we're underway, I'm in the weather 100% of the time because I'm at the helm. My wife, who's in her 80s now, is a passenger. And so I'm sailing the boat effectively alone. She will cast off a jib sheet now and then, but that's about the limit of her participation in operating the boat. So, so we end up basically, very, very limited in our use of the boat. So so periodically I find myself thinking, maybe I should sell the sailboat, buy a powerboat. So what I've done today is I decided to do a little bit of an analysis of the financial side of buying a powerboat. There are a couple of attractive boats for sale nearby right now. One is a Ranger Tug 29. That's a, smaller boat than we have, but it has full overnight accommodations, has a bow thruster and a stern thruster, which makes getting in and out of the slip easy, and can cruise along at 12 to 15 knots, which greatly expands our range. So if we go out for 4 hours, we can go to a destination 30 miles away and come back. And that's a consideration. A Ranger is a bit of a fair weather boat. They're not really designed to be able to handle much in the way of chop. And a 2 to 3 foot chop would beat you up pretty good in a Ranger 29. So that's one option. And, boat like that, there's one listed right now that I could probably pick up for $175K. And the other boat that's attractive to me is a Hinckley 36-foot picnic boat. There's a really nice one for sale locally. A little more money, probably pick it up for about $210. Those are Hinckley picnic boats are much more capable boats than a Ranger 29. 36-foot boat, but it's designed to be able to handle a lot more chop. It's also a jet boat, so you can pretty much ignore the lobster gear, which is a big plus. And it's faster. It can cruise at 23, 25 knots and get up to almost 30 knots. So running out to Mount Desert Rock, which is 25 miles, could be a 1-hour trip if the conditions are okay, maybe 2 if it's a little choppy. And a Hinckley picnic boat can easily handle 4 to 5 foot seas. Might get a little bumpy, but you can handle it safely. So, really would extend our range and capabilities. Plus, man, in a Hinckley picnic boat, you'd be traveling in style. Plus, they're really nice boats. And so that's, a couple boats that I've been thinking about. So let's run the economics. Okay, if you're going to buy a new boat, we got to buy it. That means you need to get some money out of the bank. I'm a firm believer that boats are toys, and you don't finance toys. So that means you're going to be paying cash. So what I've done is I've gone through the purchase costs to buy the 2 boats I mentioned, a Hinckley Picnic 36 and a Ranger Tug 29. Here they are. Boat 1 is the Hinckley, boat 2 is the Ranger. Let's go through the Hinckley. Cost to buy the boat be about $210,000. You're gonna have to survey it in order to get insurance. Given the survey charge per foot, it's about $1,080 to survey it. The boat's currently in the water, so it'd have to be hauled to for the survey because you need an out-of-water survey. So that's about $300 round trip, maybe a little more. Depends on where you get it done. Transferring the documentation is $84 if you do it yourself, which I would. It's simple. Just a form you submit. Then there's sales tax. In Maine, we have a 5.5% sales tax on boats. On a $210,000 boats, that's $11,550 that you have to pay when you buy the boat. Then insurance on a $200,000 boat's about $2,000 and brings the purchase price to just over $225,000 that you'd have to put out. Now let's look at the Ranger. It's a smaller boat, newer but smaller, 29 versus 36. Probably pick it up for about $175. And survey, because it's smaller, be about $870. Haul out again about $300. It is in the water. Documentation still $84. Sales tax $9,625 on the purchase price. Insurance, because it's a less valuable boat, about $1,500. So total purchase price about $187,400. So there's a fair chunk of money that you'd have to put out. Now, so I'd have to take the money out of my investments, buy whichever boat. Now, let's look at the next consideration. If I buy one of these boats, the money is going to come out of my investments. Right now, that money is making money for me. And I use the current return. A lot of my ready cash is tied up in treasuries, earning 4.3, 4.4%. And so if I bought a Hinckley picnic boat, my lost income would be about $10,000 on the money I put into the picnic boat. However, since I'd have lower income, I would save some money on taxes, so I'd save about $2,200 on income tax, and leaving me with a net income reduction of about $7,800. And similarly with the Ranger Tug, the lost income from the money I put in to buy the boat would be about $8,150. Tax savings about $1,800, leaving me with about $6,350 net income reduction. So if I buy one of these boats, I'm not going to have as much money coming in to pay for running and maintaining the boat. What about annual operating costs? Well, around here, you haul your boat out for the winter. It goes into storage. The place that I keep my sailboat, I have all the prices, and I have a slot there, so I would be able to just take the sailboat out of there, sell it, and put a new boat in that slot. It can be tough to get a storage slot around here, so that's a factor. So let's look at the annual costs for owning one of these boats. Hinckley picnic boat. Winter storage, just a spot in the building, about $2,160. That's for cold storage. Haul and launch is about $700 for the round trip. Maintenance, that's all the winter maintenance on a Hinckley boat. There's lots of wood. I'd have to revarnish every year. And also the jet drive needs a certain amount of service every year. That's going to run around $2,000 by the time you dismantle, replace consumables on the boat, change the oil on these big diesel engines. That's a couple of $100 for an oil change and filters and everything. So $2,000 for maintenance, $2,000 a year for insurance. The marina for a 36-foot boat is $6,000 a year. Fuel, I figured about 1,000 miles, and that'd be about $2,000. Fairly big chunk of change for the picnic boat, but that's a fairly go-fast boat. It does burn a little fuel. So call it $15,000 a year in annual costs. What about the Ranger Tug? Well, it's smaller, so it costs less to store. $1,740 for storage. Haul and launch, still about $700. Takes about the same amount of time and uses the same trailer. Maintenance is less because it doesn't have the jet drive that needs servicing. It doesn't have any on-deck wood. So basically we're talking bottom paint, winterizing the engine, and and the rest of the systems. And Rangers have a lot of systems that would need winterizing. So about $1,000. Cheaper boat, so $1,500 a year in insurance. Smaller, so the marina, I'd get their minimum fee, which is $5,500. It isn't as fast, has a smaller engine, so about $1,800 a year for fuel, bringing its cost down to about $12,200 a year. So about $2,500 a year less than the Hinckley to maintain the boat. So those are purchase costs, income considerations, lost income because the money I spend on a boat's going to be out of circulation as long as I own the boat, and then annual costs to own the boat. So, what does that mean? Well, the next step is I'm not going to own this boat forever if I buy it. I'm not getting any younger, so maybe 5 to 7 years. then I'm going to probably sell it. And that's a big factor. So, what happens when we sell it? Well, neither boat would be getting newer. The Hinckley is going to depreciate. It's pretty near the bottom of its resale value now. It'll depreciate a little. I figured about 10%. So that means that if I sold the Hinckley, I'd probably get about $190 for it. Well, I'm going to have to pay a brokerage fee. That's usually 10% of the purchase price. That's $19,000, which means I'd walk away from the sale with about $171,000. Now, if I take my purchase costs and subtract that $171 from it, that means that my loss from purchase is about $54,000 over the period that I own the boat. Yeah, big chunk of change. What about the Ranger? Well, Rangers are a little different. The boat I'm looking at is newer. I think it's a 2016, 9 years old. But people who buy Rangers think of them more like cars. And they tend to view older boats as significantly depreciated. So given what I see online for prices for Ranger 29s, I would expect that it's going to depreciate quite a bit more than the Hinckley. So I put in 20% depreciation. That means that when I put this boat up for sale, if everything goes well, I might get $140 for it. Big drop, $35,000 less than I paid for it. A brokerage fee would be less since it's typically 10%, so $14,000 means I'm going to walk away from the boat with about $126K. You take that off the purchase price and the cost to buy it, and it's a loss from purchase of about $61,400. That's a lot of money, almost $10,000 a year if I owned the boat for 6 years. So, what's the total cost of ownership of one of these boats? Well, I did it for 6 years. Let's look at the Hinckley picnic boat. Over the 6 years, I'm going to lose about $47,000 in income. It's just not going to come in, so I have to account for that. My annual operating costs would be about $89,000. Yeah, fair amount of money. My resale loss, $54,000. That means that, this boat, the Hinckley picnic boat, over 6 years would cost me about $190,000, or an annual cost of about $32,000. So, so basically, I would, even though I'd sell the boat for a reasonable amount of money, when you factor everything in there, it's an expensive toy. What about the Ranger? Well, lost income there is less, $38,000. Annual costs less, $73,500. Resale loss is more at $61,400. So total loss on the Ranger 29 is $173,000. That's about what I think I could buy it for right now, not including taxes and everything. So about $29,000 a year, rounded up, to own a Ranger Tug 29 for 6 years. Yeah, that's a lot of money. And it comes down to, is it worth it to me? Because, that much money taken out of my investments in perpetuity, because this money would be gone, would mean that, my lifetime income would be decreased by buying one of these boats. And, when I look at it strictly from a financial point of view, I don't know. I begin to think it isn't worth it. Is being able to hop in the boat and run out to Mount Desert Rock to look at the lighthouse, or maybe run down to Roke Island or something like that, worth that much money? That's a tough decision to make. Yeah, it would be fun. It would keep me out on the water for probably another 5 to 6 years. Yeah, but in 6 years, I'll be in my 80s, and my wife will be closing in on 90. Will we even still be around? We don't know. We're not getting any younger. So, yeah, I would have to say that just my first impression after looking at the numbers is, wow, it's not worth it. Just keep the sailboat. Sailboat's paid for. It does cost about 12 grand a year to maintain and operate it. Sometimes a little more. This year, it's probably more like about 15. But that's the way it goes. But it doesn't cost anything else. And I will eventually recover 3/4 of what I paid for it 30 years ago. So if I lost 10,000 on it over 30 years, that's what, $300 a year. That's trivial. So yeah. So the sailboat, it's expensive on an annual basis, but in the big picture, it doesn't really impact anything else. My income wouldn't decline because I wouldn't be tying up a lot of money. My future income wouldn't decrease because I wouldn't have spent all that money on the boat, pay for it out of current income. And and I'm familiar with it. It does have its limitations, which I mentioned at the beginning. But when I do a financial only analysis like this, it pretty much says to me, keep what you got. I'm not really interested in buying an older powerboat because, the big expense with powerboats is engines. And you buy a 30 or a 40-year-old powerboat, which you can pick up pretty cheap. You blow a 200 horsepower diesel or 300 horsepower diesel, you're going to be $50,000 to replace it. It's a lot of money. A very painful expenditure, and it'll take months to put a new engine in. So, yeah. Anyway, that's kind of where I am and what I wanted to talk about this morning. And now I have to think about it. Is it worth it? I think I might call up the brokers and go have a look at these two boats. Maybe go out for a ride on them and sort of evaluate the fun factor and see how I feel about them. That may make all the difference in the world. Plus, both of those boats would be much, much easier to handle. No problem docking, no problem maneuvering. And I've had a powerboat before when I had the Tortuga, my wooden powerboat. You just get in it and go where you want. So, yeah. Lots of things to consider, but the money is a big factor. Can I afford it? Well, yeah, it's not that much in the grand scheme of things, but do I want to afford it is the bigger question. Anyway, that's what I've been thinking about. I don't know if it's, looking at the money kind of scares me away, but, have to think about it a little more and decide if it's something I really want to do, or, am I just getting too old and decrepit to continue boating? I don't think so, but, who knows what'll happen next year. Anyway, hope you found this entertaining. Thank you for watching.